Well, I just saw Morbius, and oh man, I've really been wanting to talk about this film for a little bit. As you can tell, there's been a lot of talk over it all over the web. And usually it falls into three categories of people who watched it. The first category is people hated it. I mean, obviously. Number two, people enjoyed it. I would even go so far as to say, loved it. Okay. And then there's the third category. People thought it was okay, nothing that terrible or good. But of course, you may be asking, where do I fall into that category? Well, I'm going to scratch all those categories and make my own. Because, screw it, I don't care what it was, I just had fun. And that's all I really wanted to have with this movie. And you know what? Looks like other people too, because this movie made over $100 million so far. And I can tell, the theater I was at was packed. I was surprised how many people were going just to go see this movie. At least from my experience. Like, the theater, I'm not kidding. Like, the whole top row was full. I mean, I wheeled in my grandfather because he wanted to just relax. All the recliner seats were taken, so we had to go one step down. I had to walk him down, and we had to go right to the middle. We still nonetheless had fun, and I'm actually surprised he stayed awake long enough to enjoy this movie. And even he didn't think it was that bad either. Or at least as bad as... pardon me, as bad as people let on. Because the main reason I really didn't want to talk about this was because of one particular reason. Rotten Tomatoes. They decided to give this movie 17 on Rotten Tomatoes. This makes it the second lowest comic book movie of all time, with the lowest still being apparently Fantastic Four, surprisingly. Yeah, Four stick. And also, it got me questioning my sanity when I decided to go check out a little other vampire movie I remember not just being as talkative then, Twilight. Of course it is, so I decided to check out what the lowest rated Twilight movie was, and I was surprised to see that it was Breaking Dawn Part 1. I mean, I wasn't that surprised at all that a Twilight movie got a bad review. But I was surprised to see that it was like 24, 26, and Morbius has 17. So it got me questioning my sanity when a Twilight movie has a higher score on Rotten Tomatoes than Morbius. Oh, I'm really going to question the sanity of anyone who watched those movies now. But I am going to ask, is it as bad as people let on? No, I don't think it is. I think it's really enjoyable. I mean, I had fun watching it. And I will point out, I was probably the only person in this my movie theater who probably bought this. And screw it, I don't care. I love souvenirs. So thank you, movies, for giving me this. Cheers. But of course, now let's dive in and analyze this film, as I really want to talk about this film. So, you may be asking, who is Morbius? Well, Morbius is a lesser-known Spider-Man villain, obviously, because Sony, Spider-Man Media. And more importantly, he fits into the new franchise that Sony has built for itself, which is now called Sony's Spider-Man Universe, previously known as Sony's Marvel Universe, and previously otherwise known as Sony's Universe of Marvel characters. Boy, if you can't even name your own franchise, I think you really are doomed. More doomed than the Dark Universe. That's how bad you are. But I wasn't expecting anything I wasn't expecting anything transcending or, So, I'm trying to judge it as a film, and in terms of going in, what was I expecting? Was I expecting anything along the lines of Into the Spider-Verse? No, this is easily the best Spider-Man movie, and nothing can have me question otherwise. But of course, watching the movie, it got me thinking if it was going to connect to the relatively larger MCU universe, considering that Morbius is in fact connected, surprisingly, to No Way Home, and it has me questioning my sanity if Morbius will somewhat connect to the Doctor Strange sequel, Multiverse of Madness. Considering Marvel Studios and Sony had to cooperate just for the post-credit scene and let there be carnage to interact with No Way Home, and for No Way Home to interact with this movie, considering most likely if that's the case, then the case should be the same for Morbius. And if that's the case, I really am kind of scared to find out what the truth is when I see Multiverse of Madness. If it at all connects to Morbius, that is. I highly doubt it, but I won't be surprised to find out anyway. I mean, that movie's probably going to blow all our minds anyway in some aspects. But it had me thinking, well, if it's not going to be as good as Into the Spider-Verse, and if it's not probably going to be along the lines of a Marvel movie, or at least MCU movie, then what was I expecting? Well, I was expecting either something along the lines of as stupid but fun as Let There Be Carnage, or maybe something as enjoyable as Venom. So, where would I place it in this category of Sony's Marvel Universe? Or actually, I should say Sony's Spider-Man Universe. I'd say it fits right in the middle between these. Let me explain. As I did know there were some criticisms with this. The acting, the editing, and the effects. I have 3 counterclaims. 1, the acting is decent. They are given okay material to work for, so the directing and writing is only as good as the actor can give. And I feel like they work well with what's given to them. The acting is pretty fine, it's standard. I mean, they do give convincing performances. But of course, I will, note standout performances such as Jared Leto, who previously played Joker in Zack Snyder's Justice League, which was a total redemption arc from Suicide Squad. By that I mean 2016 Suicide Squad. And by the way, still waiting on David Ayer's cut of that, by the way. Working on Warner Brothers. Actually, I should say Warner Discovery. Just heard about that. Really excited. And of course, I want to talk about the other main power star, our main villain. And who is he, you may ask? Well, it's none other than the Doctor from Doctor Who. That's right. Matt Smith, who previously played the 11th Doctor on Doctor Who, and apparently also was involved in The Crown, decided to be a supervillain in this movie. And I could tell he was having way too much fun on set. He was, as you can tell, having the time of his life filming this. And you know what? I loved it for that. I genuinely really did love it and enjoy it because of that. So, thank you, movie, for allowing Matt Smith just to go full on ballistic mode. Thank you for that. And of course, there's also the effects. The effects ranged mostly. For the most part, they were very sleek and fit well in with the environment that the movie had established for itself. Goofy, but still somewhat serious at the same time. Kind of like Venom. Or at least the first one, I should say. But I will say, the only time I really did kinda lose interest or even kind of question the realness of the effects was probably during the climax when, spoilers, Lucien, or I should say Milo, who became a vampire, decided to go and fight Morbius because of their conflicting views on how to handle their vampiristic condition. I don't really know the terminology for this. Well, that's where I could really tell the effects started to seem somewhat dodgy, really messy, kind of confused as to what to really show us. And if the effects don't even know what they want to be, then I get kind of concerned. But then again, kinda. Because it does redeem itself later with the actual ending. Somewhat. As I cannot criticize a movie that actually has a send-up to one of the greatest comic book heroes of our time, Batman. Yeah, for some reason they decided to really pay tribute to Christopher Nolan's Batman Begins. And I can kind of see why. Vampire, bats, I can see it going well hand in hand in this concept. But if you're asking if it fits just as well as the concept did in Eternals, it fits a little bit better than that. But just as hilariously. So out of place. But I love it even more for that. But of course, that leads me to the last thing I really want to talk about, the editing. This is where it goes right out the door. The editing in this is horrible, at least for the first half, I think. To give you an example, there's a case, the movie starts out with Jared Leto's character, Michael Morbius, going to Costa Rica to collect some bats. Okay, then it flashes back to his child, and he meets his best friend, Lucien, who then he renamed Milo, because apparently he likes to name all of his friends Milo for whatever reason, I don't know. It's just a hobby for him. Then, of course, they're both suffering from the same rare blood disease. Michael, and then we cut a flash forward actually to the future, where he's now a professional scientist who is now in Sweden about to be given the Nobel Prize. And then it constantly jump cuts to him from Sweden back, flashbacking. So flash forwards and flashbacks at the same time, interlinked. And then while he goes up to accept his award and crutches in hand, it then cuts to him at the hospital, and one of the patients he's treating, quote, and I quote, "I can't believe you dissed the King of Sweden," or at least the Prime Minister of Sweden. I don't know the terminologies. Yeah, when it comes to this, I can't believe you dissed like the Prime Minister of Sweden, I think it is. And he's like, "Well, I didn't want the award." And they treated it as if we did see this, even though it just skipped right over it. And you'll see it does a lot of that in this movie. There was a lot of scenes in the trailers, like all three of them actually, that are not even in this movie at all. There are two scenes shown in the trailers that feature black. So, for example, Michael Keaton as he returns as the Vulture, and he did quote unquote say that he was doing some reshoots, so I could expect the footage to be a little bit different. But to entirely remove both essences of his presence in the footage, and just replace it with something entirely new we never saw at all, that's really questionable. As in the trailers, we saw him getting arrested, going down the alleyway, and Michael Morbius going right past him, most likely being introduced to him just recently, which makes more sense when you get to the actual mid-credit scenes later, and we'll talk about that in a little. And a lot of other scenes get cut like that as well, like Michael Morbius talking to his mentor on a bench, Michael Morbius actually jumping around, maybe having a fight sequence in Milo's house. And there's even a scene of which the detective, Michael Stroud, I believe, gets to show off his robot arm because he's kind of like a superhero in the comics, and actually was supposed to do some superhero stuff in the movie. Well, all of those scenes were cut out, and you only get to see his arm in the last scene, and he doesn't do anything with it. He just walks up and looks up as Michael Morbius flees the scene. Oh, that's heroic. Those are just examples of how the editing works in this movie. Is it bad? Yeah. Does it always work? Yes and no. I feel like it is only choppy like that for the first half. For the second half, it's not as noticeable, but towards the end, you could definitely tell it comes back full on in hand. As the fight ends, he ascends into the sky, his dead girlfriend comes back to life, and it just cuts right there. Well, actually, it cuts with him in the sky, but doesn't really matter. The fight's over, and movie. Yeah, because that's how you want it in a movie, right at the freaking last second a fight ends. Plenty of reasons wrong with that, but I don't care. I had fun watching this, and that's all I wanted to have. So, my conclusion is that it isn't as good as the first Venom movie, but neither as it is as bad as its sequel, Let There Be Carnage. So I'd say it fits well snugly in between. And of course, if I had to rank them in terms of Sony's Spider-Man universe, I'd say Venom's the best, Morbius is next, and then Let There Be Carnage is probably the weakest. I'm not going to say worst because there is a lot of bad stuff in it, but I don't think it's noticeably bad, but I had fun watching it, so I don't care. I just can't say it's bad because I don't like saying movies are bad. So, my verdict is I'll give it 4 out of 5 lightsabers. It is as bad as you could probably expect it to be, but then again, this is Sony, so I'm kind of used to that already. I just wanted something very fun and very enjoyable for me to enjoy at a movie theater, and I got that. So, thank you, Sony, for allowing that to happen. And also, thank you again for the souvenir. Always love one of these. So, what did you think of Morbius? Did you think it was another weak entry and long decades worth essence of multiple superhero movies we've been getting in the superhero boom? Or did you think it was actually a lot better than what people have said? Or did you just think it was another run-of-the-mill movie that can easily be forgotten later on? I don't know, I'm very curious to see what you all have to say. Let me know let me know your opinions in the comments down below. Please like and subscribe. I do hope to have more reviews like this in the future. For now, all I can say is take care and have fun in the movies.